So my last video has garnered a bit of attention. However, there was so much more I wanted to add, but it either wouldn't fit the video style or deviated a bit too much from the points I was trying to get across. So in this video, I'm going to expand on my thoughts, as well as mention everything that I loved and didn't love in this episode, as well as give a summary of my thoughts of the episode at the end. And without further ado, let's get started. The starting flashback we get from King's Tide was absolutely needed. We learn what happens to Lilith, Hootie, and the Boiling Isles immediately after the Hexside gang reaches the human realm. We also see the Owlbeasts take over Ida and are left wondering what happened to her as the title shows on screen. This intro is a stark contrast compared to the relatively cheerful intro in Thanks to Them, and in my opinion is perfect as it captures the viewer's interests as well as sets the tone for the rest of the episode. The next sequence with Luz in the in-between world is very interesting. It is nearly certain that the figure Luz saw is a Titan, and I am very excited to see what comes of this in the finale. Next, the reactions of each character upon re-entering the Boiling Isles fits them very well. Gus and Willow are excited and happy, Amity is relieved, Hunter needs therapy, and Camila attempts to make sense of the world while Luz also needs therapy. Where's Steve when you need him? The next shots of Bellows are really cool, and I especially love the acid-like effect he has, showcasing his toxicity? I don't really know. The hallucinations of Caleb are interesting, as this is the first proper introduction of him. The bloody knife behind Caleb confirms what Bellows has done to him, and I find it interesting how Bellows seems to be angry at Caleb, saying that he is mocking him. I can't wait to see where this goes. On a side note, I really hope that Bellows doesn't have a sudden redemption, much like a certain character in this episode. Bellows is totally deranged, and I want it to stay that way. I have a few theories of what might happen, which I will talk about in a later video. Now, the meeting at the Owl House had so much potential, and I don't think it was met. The little conversation between Willow, Gus, and Camila was nice, and the showing of Willow's stress was very well done, with the way her voice cracks up and plants sprout as she walks. The conversation between Amity and Luz was also sweet, but I feel that Camila should have been there or at least been listening. Considering that this was the place Luz spent most of her time in, I felt it was kind of strange that Camila only sat in the living room. I also found it very weird how she was never shown the picture of Ida, King, and Luz. All in all, I feel that the whole rat food sequence could have been removed in favor of Camila being in the room. The upcoming Bonesboro sequence is my favorite part of this episode. Everything is done perfectly. I've always had an interest in post-apocalyptic scenarios, and seeing the city abandoned is so cool. And I love all the little graffiti details that are shown. The sudden change in aesthetics as the Collector arrives is also really cool, showcasing the fantasy his childish mind lives in. The fact that King had been telling the Collector his and Luz's adventures was a really nice touch, as I honestly wasn't sure what the Owl House game would have been. Also, freaking Tara! I laughed so hard after seeing her and how she acted as Ida.
Ooh, I like musicians!
The terror in her eyes as she turns into a puppet was a sobering reminder of the Collector's powers, and I love the callback when Camila sees King. I also really like the detail of the palace being called the Archive House. So up until now, everything has gone nearly perfect, with a little tangent about Camila at the Owl House being more of a suggestion than a complaint. But starting from here is when I felt that things started to feel off. If you saw my other video, you would know how I felt about Bartholomew's entrance, and I still feel the same way. There should have been some explanation as to why they were there, like even one line would have sufficed for this case, especially since it is implied this wasn't the first time the Collector was there, and the fact that it was dangerous to be out there. There is even a sign in New Hexside saying that if you leave, you die. Just straight up die. Whatever. The flashback scene was really good. I feel that the draining spell is this show's version of Order 66, and the more we get of it, the better it is. Again, I feel that if they all just hid, the Collector's spies wouldn't have seen them, as it is shown that the spies are still out there, but they still haven't detected the new students in New Hexside. Now, it is from this moment that I feel that the episode started to go downhill. The whole new Hexite thing should have been like the Owl House. A nice place to go and visit old characters, but the need to press on should have been higher. One major complaint about this episode that I and many others share is that there was no penultimate feeling, or the "this is it, it's all or nothing" vibe, until the very, very end. I feel that this is because of New Hexide. I'll explain this more a bit later on in the video, but just keep that in mind. That being said, the introduction to New Hexide was really well done. I love all the little details and how they basically made it a Bonesboro 2.0, as well as giving an accurate representation of what would happen if kids took over. Now I want to take a moment to talk about Emira and Edric. They aren't important to the episode whatsoever, and that is what I take issue with. They either should have played a slightly more important role, or none at all. In fact, I feel that it would have been best if Edric had been captured and Emira lived to tell the tale to further that penultimate feeling. Besides, Edric just acts as comic relief, which in the moment was kind of funny, but looking back, the entire New Hexide introduction was comic relief. However, this comic relief worked. I love the callback to "this whole time" and Gus's slow head turn. The next sequence with Bello is amazing. It was so hard to decide whether this or the Bonesboro sequence was my favorite, but in the end I chose the latter simply because this kind of came out of nowhere. It is still remarkable, and I feel that this is a taste of what the show could have been if Dana had been given the full control of her own show. I don't even think I need to explain why I like it so much. The next sequence with the King and the Collector is also really good. I find it believable that Odalia survived, and it's kind of funny to see her reduced to a glorified maid. The conversation between the Collector and King is also nice, and if there's one thing you want to know about me, I am a sucker for lore. Seriously, the fact that the Titans and Collectors fought against each other, and now only one child from each species remains is such good writing. Wow, what a great collection of scenes. I really hope that they keep this hot streak going. Oh boy. Yeah, so if you've seen my previous video, you would know that I have some strong opinions regarding these two. But to avoid repetition, and get an excuse to tell you to watch my other video, I am not going to repeat myself too much. I still feel the same way about these two, and I think I now realize why. For whatever reason, Kikimora is the main villain in this episode, and she isn't even that important to the show. Her character arc should have been completed in King's Tide, and maybe she could have had a cameo in this episode or finale, but now I just find her annoying and insufferable. She should have no reason to want to kill Luz, especially after the Coven Day Parade fiasco and how Luz saved the Boiling Isles from Bellows, which she has to know about. But besides the flaws in her character, she is the main reason there is no penultimate feeling, as the main conflict in this episode is with her. There is zero conflict between the gang and Bellows/Collector until the last 15 seconds, and even then, they don't interact. I feel that if there was some fight between these two parties, it would have satisfied that penultimate feeling. And while we are on this topic, another thing that hurt this episode is the fact that there were zero losses or sacrifices. Think of Thanks to Them. It is much more tame and lighthearted compared to this episode, but still had heavy conflict, as well as loss through Flapjack. I was actually really shocked that a character was killed so early, and I was so hyped as I was certain something would happen in episode 2 as well, but alas, nothing did. I still feel that my version of events, which I explained at the end of my previous video, would have been better as it still incorporated the new Hexite sequence, but also had conflict between the main group and main villains, as well as loss and sacrifice. A few new things I would like to mention is that I feel that there was a missed opportunity to have Camila talk to some of the other students of New Hexide. It would have allowed more screen time for the side characters, while also allowing Camila to learn more about the Boiling Isles. One thing I found strange is that the entire time Camila is there, she only sees the bad side of the demon realm, and yet still wants Luz to stay there. I understand she wants Luz to make her own decision that would make her happy, but the fact that she doesn't even think about it when she is shown literally nothing good was a bit weird. From talking with the side characters at New Hexide, she could have at least seen the nice side of the Boiling Isles, or the nice people. Also, the Collector's spies could have made a great climax scene, but they were rarely used, which is a shame. Also, the room where they extracted Luz's memories had some of Willow's private memories hanging on the wall, which was a bit strange but isn't too important to dwell on. And finally, Basha herself. Again, if you saw my previous video, you'll know how I feel about her and her sudden change in character, and suffice to say, I still feel the same way. Now, for all the bad mouthing I've done about the new Hexite sequence, there's still a lot of good things I appreciated. As I said, the introduction to new Hexite was hilarious and very well done. Next, I am glad that the show didn't go through the main hero makes a speech and everybody agrees trope. They even acknowledge this. I also liked Gus and Matt's conversation as him being a leader, and the gang splitting up actually feels realistic and not at all contrived. Willow's self-doubts and stress are very real things, and I'm happy that the show talks about it, although they could have gone a better way about it. Gus and Hunter going after her also makes sense, as Gus is her longtime best friend, and Hunter is Hunter. But let's take a step back and talk about the in-between scenes during the new Hexite sequence. The King and Hootie reunion felt a little forced, as it is weird that after all this time, Hootie is now being moved and King runs into him. But yet again, we get lore! The Ida reveal scene was great, and it is nice to see how she is still herself despite the situation she is in, especially considering the love of her life is right next to her in mind-controlled puppet form, ready to attack her at a moment's notice. Speaking of which, this scene is really cool. Lilith's reveal was also nicely done, and her reunion with Hootie was hilarious as well. Next, the Belle's possession fail scene was really dark, and I love it. But all of that kind of gets thrown out the window as he just somehow knows to go to the palace. I feel that he should have at least seen something or had a good reason to go there. The rain possession scene was nicely animated, and I am curious as to what role Odalia will play as she sees this occur. But one major complaint about this episode I have is that the misunderstanding via eavesdropping cliche that happens with King and the Collector felt really forced and unnatural. It is not in King's character at all to act like that, and it really could have been done better. Personally, I would have made it so that the Collector sees that King lied to him about Ida, and Bellows then takes advantage of the situation. The Willow sequence, however, was really interesting, but it falls short, mainly due to her reasoning for being so stressed is she misses her dads, which is a good reason, but I feel that she should have said something along the lines of, "I can't take this anymore, I just want to go home with my dads," or something, given the mature theme of this episode. Hunter getting his powers was nice. It was a little cliche, but it was cool nonetheless. The Kikimora sequence going on at the same time was nice, and I love the callback to the invisibility spell. I initially was confused at Luz's statement that all she wanted was to be understood, considering that she was understood by pretty much everyone on the Boiling Isles, but I guess that she specifically wanted to be understood by her mother, which makes sense. The fight against Kikimora, however, really fell short. This was supposed to be the climax of the episode, but the gang only fights her for 50 seconds. Think about how cool it would have been to fight the Collector's spies, but whatever. The two-sentence convo between Willow and Basha was also just really off-putting.
Basha, don't think this means I'm finished with you.
Whatever. I didn't do this for any of you.
The introduction of Stringbean was done really well, and I love how each character guessed what it was based on theories from the Owl House community. It was a bit cheesy to pull the "it's everything" card, but if there's one thing this show can do, it is instantly make new characters fan favorites. Now, I want you to think about how you felt in the last 20 seconds of the episode, as it is revealed that the Collector and Bellows were watching the gang, and the Collector, fully brainwashed by Bellows now, slowly, angrily rises and snaps his fingers. That feeling of, oh crap, things are going to go down. That is that penultimate feeling I keep talking about. This scene does it perfectly, but it is a shame that it is literally at the very end. All in all, this was a solid episode on its own, but as the second last in the entire show, it really fell short of its maximum potential. It felt more like a setup than a finale episode, and I feel that Thanks to Them did a better job than For the Future as a penultimate episode in the fact that it had conflict and loss. But alas, we have what we have, and I'm sure Dana and her team did the best with what they had. And with that, I thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe. See ya!